"Your mom is just a filthy maid, let her eat in the kitchen with the dog," my husband said, then pushed my elderly mother away from the table in front of everyone. His mom just smirked. Actually smirked at the sight of my 68-year-old mother stumbling backward, grabbing the table to keep from falling. I stood up slowly, took my mom's trembling hand in mine, and walked toward him. My husband Michael looked smug, thinking he'd finally put me in my place. His mother Patricia looked satisfied, like this was the moment she'd been waiting for since the day her son married me. What happened next is something they'll never forget. What happened next changed everything. Before we continue, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to hear my story. If you're comfortable, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Now let me tell you my story. My name is Catherine Marie Jenkins, and I am 42 years old. I am a corporate lawyer at one of Baltimore's most prestigious firms. I make $250,000 a year. I own a beautiful home in a desirable neighborhood. I drive a luxury car. By every external measure, I am successful. But none of it would exist without my mother. My mother's name is Doris May Jenkins, and she is 68 years old. For 45 years, from the time she was 23 until she retired last year, my mother was a domestic worker, a housekeeper, a maid. She cleaned the homes of wealthy families in Baltimore and the surrounding suburbs. She scrubbed their toilets, washed their floors, did their laundry, cooked their meals, and often raised their children while they pursued careers and social lives. She left our small apartment at 5 in the morning and came home at 7 in the evening, her feet aching, her back bent, her hands raw from cleaning chemicals. She did this 6 days a week for 45 years, and she did it all for me. My father left when I was 2 years old. He wanted the freedom to live his life without the burden of a wife and child. So it was just my mother and me, in a tiny 2-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood where gunshots were a common nighttime sound. My mother could have been bitter, could have been angry at the world, at my father, at the circumstances that forced her into backbreaking work for minimal pay. But she wasn't. "Baby girl," she would tell me every night as she helped me with my homework, her fingers still smelling of bleach. "Education is your way out. You study hard, you work harder than everyone else, and you make something of yourself. You hear me?" "Yes, Mama. I clean these white folks' houses so you don't have to. I scrub their floors so you can walk on better ones. You understand?" "Yes, Mama." And I did understand. Even as a child, I understood the sacrifice she was making. I was a good student. More than good. I was exceptional. Straight A's through elementary, middle, and high school. I won scholarships, awards, recognition. My mother came to every awards ceremony in her work clothes because she couldn't afford to miss hours of pay to go home and change. She'd sit in the audience, the only black woman in a room full of wealthy parents, her cleaning uniform pressed neatly, her head held high. "That's my baby," she'd say when I walked across the stage. "That's my Catherine." I went to college on a full academic scholarship. But scholarships don't cover everything. Books, housing, deposits, food, transportation. My mother worked extra jobs to fill the gaps. She cleaned offices at night. She did ironing for neighbors on Sundays. She took on any work she could find. Then came law school. Even with loans and part-time work, it wasn't enough. Law school is expensive, brutally expensive. I was drowning in costs, considering dropping out. That's when my mother sat me down and told me something I didn't know. "Baby, I've been saving for you since the day you were born. Every penny I could spare, I put away. It's not much, but it's yours." She handed me a bank book. Inside was $47,000, money she'd saved over 23 years, working herself to exhaustion, denying herself everything. "Mama, no, this is your retirement money." "My retirement is seeing my daughter become a lawyer. That's my retirement. You take this money and you finish school." I cried. I tried to refuse, but she wouldn't hear it. "You think I worked this hard to watch you quit? Use it, Catherine. Make me proud." I used it. I finished law school. I passed the bar on my first try. I got hired at a top firm. And I made her proud. For the next 15 years I climbed the legal ladder. I worked 100-hour weeks, took cases no one else wanted, proved myself over and over in rooms full of people who looked at me and saw someone who didn't belong. A black woman, from a poor neighborhood, daughter of a maid, but I belonged. I'd earned my place, and I never forgot who made it possible. 5 years ago at a legal conference I met Michael Patterson. He was 40, a lawyer at a different firm from a wealthy Baltimore family. His father was a judge. His mother Patricia came from old money. The kind of family that had been wealthy for generations. Michael was charming, handsome, intelligent. He seemed different from other men I'd dated. He asked about my background with genuine interest. He listened when I talked about my mother, about growing up poor, about the struggle to get where I was. That's incredible, he'd say. You're incredible, self-made, strong, resilient. He met my mother early in our relationship. Mama was still working then, still cleaning houses at 63. Michael was respectful, polite, warm. Mrs. Jenkins, Catherine has told me so much about you. You raised an amazing daughter. Mama had smiled, but I saw the weariness in her eyes. She'd worked for wealthy white families her whole life. She knew their type. He seems nice, she said later, carefully. Just be careful, baby. Careful of what? People like that, they're nice when you're dating. Marriage is different. You see who they really are. I dismissed her concern. Michael was different. He was progressive, modern, woke even. He said all the right things about race, about equality, about justice. We married after 2 years of dating. The wedding was at his family's country club. His family insisted on paying, insisted on the venue, insisted on everything. I went along with it, wanting to keep the peace. My mother sat in the front row in her best dress, surrounded by Michael's family and their wealthy friends. I saw how they looked at her, how they whispered, how Patricia, Michael's mother, introduced her to guests. This is the bride's mother. She worked very hard to raise Catherine. Worked very hard. Code for working class. Code for beneath us. But Michael was good to me. Those first few years, we bought a house together, though he didn't know that my mother had given me another $50,000 she'd saved, money I used for the down payment. He thought it was all my savings from my salary. His family tolerated me. Patricia made it clear I wasn't what she'd wanted for her son. Michael could have married Elizabeth Thornton. You know, the Thorntons have been in Baltimore for 200 years, but she was civil. Then, last year, everything changed. My mother had a stroke. It was mild. Thank God, she survived. Recovered mostly, but she was weakened. Her left side was affected. She couldn't live alone anymore. Couldn't work. Not that she should have still been working at 67, but she'd insisted until her body literally couldn't do it anymore. Mama's moving in with us, I told Michael. Just temporarily, until she's stronger. Michael's face had darkened. Catherine, we don't have room. We have 4 bedrooms. One is your office, one is a guest room. She can take the guest room. But what about when my family visits? Your family can stay in a hotel. My mother needs care. We argued. It was our first real fight. Michael didn't want her there. He made excuses, privacy, space, routine, but I knew the real reason. He didn't want a maid living in his house. He'd never said it explicitly, but over the years his true feelings had begun to show. Little comments. Small digs. Does your mom really still clean houses at her age? You'd think she'd have saved enough to retire by now. I know you came from humble beginnings, Catherine, but you don't have to keep bringing it up. His mother Patricia was worse. She'd never hidden her disdain for my background. Catherine dear, you've done so well for yourself. You should focus on your new life, not dwell on the past. The past? My mother wasn't the past. She was my present, my foundation, my hero. I put my foot down. Mama is moving in. End of discussion. Michael relented, but he wasn't happy, neither was his family. Mama moved into our guest room. She was quiet, grateful, trying desperately not to be a burden. Despite my protests, she'd try to help around the house, folding laundry, washing dishes, cooking meals. Mama, stop. You're recovering. Rest. I can't just sit around doing nothing, baby. I feel useless. You're not useless. You're healing. But I understood. My mother had worked her entire life. Sitting idle made her feel purposeless. Michael barely spoke to her. He'd come home from work, nod politely, then disappear into his office. His family stopped visiting entirely. It's awkward with her there, Patricia said on the phone. We just don't know how to relate. Relate? To my mother, the woman who'd worked for families like theirs her whole life. Then 3 months ago, Michael got promoted to partner at his firm. It was a big deal, more money, more prestige, more status. His family was thrilled. Patricia insisted on celebrating with a family dinner. We'll host it at your house, Catherine. It'll be lovely. Just family and a few important colleagues. I should have said no. Every instinct told me this was a bad idea, but I was trying to keep peace in my marriage, trying to show Michael's family that I could be the sophisticated host they expected. Fine, we'll host. I planned everything meticulously. I took the day off work, prepared an elaborate menu, set the dining room table with our best china and crystal. I wanted everything perfect. Mama offered to help. Baby, let me cook. You know I can cook better than... Mama, no, you're a guest tonight. You're going to sit at that table like the queen you are. She looked uncertain. Catherine, maybe I should just eat in my room. I don't want to cause problems. You're not causing problems. You're my mother. You're sitting at that table. The day of the dinner I was nervous. Not about the food or the hosting. I was confident in my skills there. I was nervous about how Michael's family would treat my mother. The guests started arriving at 6. First came Patricia, dressed impeccably, immediately walking through my house like she owned it, commenting on decor choices, rearranging flower arrangements. Catherine, dear, wouldn't the white roses look better in the foyer? They're fine where they are, Patricia. Michael's brother James arrived with his wife Susan. His sister Elizabeth came with her husband Tom. Then Mr. Harrison, the senior partner at Michael's firm, arrived with his wife Margaret. I greeted everyone graciously, offered drinks, made conversation. I was good at this. I'd learned to navigate these social situations in my career. Mama stayed in her room while people arrived. I went to get her when it was time for dinner. She was dressed beautifully, a dress I'd bought her, her hair done nicely, her makeup applied carefully. You look gorgeous, Mama. I'm nervous, baby. Don't be, you belong here as much as anyone. I took her hand and led her to the dining room. The conversation died when we entered. Everyone turned to look. Patricia's smile was frozen on her face. Oh, Doris, you're joining us? Of course she is, I said firmly. Everyone, you remember my mother, Doris. There were polite nods, awkward smiles. I seated Mama to my left, in a place of honor. Patricia looked at the seating arrangement with poorly concealed displeasure. She leaned toward Michael, whispering something I couldn't hear. We started serving dinner. I'd made braised short ribs, roasted vegetables, a beautiful salad, fresh bread. The food was excellent, if I do say so myself. At first the conversation was pleasant enough. Talk of Michael's promotion, the firm's upcoming cases, vacation plans. Mama sat quietly, eating her dinner, not drawing attention to herself. Then Patricia turned her attention to my mother. So Doris, she said with false sweetness, what did you do for work before you retired? The table went quiet. Everyone knew what my mother did. Patricia knew. She was asking to make a point. Mama straightened her spine. I was a domestic worker, Mrs. Patterson, housekeeping. Oh, how humble, Patricia said, her voice dripping with condescension. Manual labor must be so physically taxing. It was honest work, Mama said quietly. Work I was proud of. Of course, Patricia said, not sounding convinced. Did you work for any families we might know? This was an interrogation, not a conversation. They were making my mother explain herself, justify her existence at their table. I worked for many families over the years, Mama said, in Roland Park, Guilford, Homeland. Those were Baltimore's wealthy neighborhoods. The implication was clear. Mama had cleaned the houses of people like them. James leaned forward. What exactly does a domestic worker do? I mean, these days everyone has cleaning services. I did everything, Mama said with dignity. Cleaned, cooked, laundry, sometimes childcare, whatever the family needed. Childcare? Elizabeth raised her eyebrows. You raised other people's children? Sometimes, when parents were busy with work or other things. How interesting, Elizabeth said in a tone that meant the opposite. Tom and I could never let strangers raise our children. It seems so impersonal. I'd had enough. Mama helped raise children because their parents chose careers over parenting. She provided love and care those children weren't getting elsewhere. There's nothing impersonal about that. Catherine, dear, we're just having a conversation, Patricia said. No, you're interrogating my mother. There's a difference. Michael shot me a warning. Look. Catherine, let's keep things pleasant. Pleasant, while his family grilled my mother about her working class life. Patricia launched into a story. When I was growing up, we had the most wonderful housekeeper, Maria. She was with us for 30 years. Lovely woman. But she always knew her place. You know, she ate in the kitchen, Use the back entrance. Never presume to join us at family meals. She looked directly at Mama as she said this. That's the problem with today's world. Patricia continued. People don't understand boundaries anymore. There's a natural order to things, and when that order is disrupted, well, it makes everyone uncomfortable. Elizabeth nodded eagerly. Mother's right. Everyone has their role. Some people are meant to lead, others to serve. It's not cruel, it's just reality. Susan, James's wife, who'd been quiet until now, spoke up. I have to agree. When we had our kitchen renovated, the workers wanted to use our bathroom. Can you imagine? We had to put our foot down. There are boundaries. They were talking about human beings like they were animals. Like needing to use a bathroom was some kind of presumption. I felt rage building in my chest. My mother sat frozen, tears forming in her eyes. That's enough, I said, my voice hard. This conversation is disgusting. Catherine, Michael said sharply, don't embarrass us. Mother has a point. I stared at my husband. Excuse me? He'd been drinking wine throughout dinner. His face was flushed, his eyes slightly unfocused, but his words were clear. Your mother? She doesn't really fit here. The table went completely silent. What did you just say? My voice was deadly quiet. Michael looked around the table, saw his mother's encouraging nod, his siblings' approving looks, emboldened. He continued. I mean, let's be honest. Catherine, she's just a maid. She cleaned toilets for a living. This is a dinner for professionals, for successful people. She doesn't belong at this table. Patricia smirked. Actually smirked. This was what she'd wanted. Her son finally putting his foot down, finally putting me and my mother in our place. Mama's hands were shaking. A single tear rolled down her cheek. Michael, I said, my voice trembling with rage. You need to stop talking, right now. But he didn't stop. The alcohol, the encouragement from his family, the resentment he'd apparently been harboring, it all came pouring out. He stood up, wobbling slightly, his face red. You know what? This is ridiculous. She shouldn't even be sitting here. This is a dinner for important people, and she's just... He walked over to my mother's chair. Your mom is just a filthy maid, he shouted. Let her eat in the kitchen with the dog. And then God help me. He pushed her. He put his hands on my 68-year-old mother's shoulders and shoved her chair backward roughly. Mama grabbed the edge of the table to keep from falling completely. Her glass tipped over, wine spilling across the white tablecloth. She was crying openly now, humiliated beyond words. Patricia smirked. That smirk, satisfied, pleased, vindicated, is burned into my memory forever. The other guests sat frozen in shock. Mr. Harrison looked horrified. His wife had her hand over her mouth. Even James and Elizabeth looked uncomfortable. But Patricia smirked. Time seemed to slow down. I looked at my mother, this woman who had sacrificed everything for me, who had worked herself to the bone to give me opportunities, who had endured disrespect and degradation her entire life with grace and dignity. I looked at my husband, this man I'd married, who had revealed himself to be exactly what my mother had warned me about. A man who thought his privilege gave him the right to abuse an elderly woman. I looked at his mother, smirking at the humiliation of a woman who had cleaned homes just like hers for 45 years. And something inside me broke. Or maybe it didn't break. Maybe something inside me finally, fully formed. I stood up slowly, deliberately. The scrape of my chair against the floor was the only sound in the completely silent room. I walked to my mother and took her hand gently. She was trembling, tears streaming down her face. Come on, Mama, I said softly. Stand up. I helped her to her feet, steadied her. She clutched my hand like a lifeline. Then, still holding my mother's hand, I walked toward Michael. He looked smug, triumphant, like he'd finally asserted his dominance, finally put me in my place. Catherine, he said, his voice condescending, don't make a scene. She needed to learn. My hand moved before I consciously decided to move it. The slap echoed through the dining room like a gunshot. My palm connected with Michael's face with such force that his head snapped to the side. The sound was satisfying, a sharp crack that silenced everything. Michael stumbled backward, his hand flying to his reddening cheek, his eyes wide with shock. You hit me, he gasped. And I'll do it again if you come near my mother. My voice didn't sound like my own. It was cold, hard, powerful. The voice of a woman who'd had enough. The room erupted, gasps, exclamations. Chairs scraping as people stood. Catherine. Patricia shrieked. You can't assault someone in their own home. I turned to her slowly. Their own home? Their own home? My voice rose with each word. Let me tell you something about this home. Patricia, this house that your precious son has been living in for 5 years. I bought it. Me, Catherine Jenkins, the daughter of a filthy maid. Michael was shaking his head. What are you talking about? We bought this house together. No, you bought this house with your money. Let me refresh your memory. The down payment was $120,000. You contributed $70,000. Where do you think the other $50,000 came from? Silence. It came from her. I pointed at my mother. That filthy maid gave me $50,000. She'd saved over decades of backbreaking work, so I could have this house, so I could have a life she never had. Patricia's face was draining of color. And that's not all, I continued, my voice shaking with rage. You want to know how I paid for law school? That filthy maid gave me $47,000 she'd saved since the day I was born, every penny she could spare, from cleaning your toilets, from scrubbing your floors, from raising your children because you were too busy with your charity galas and country clubs. I was shouting now, all the rage and pain of a lifetime pouring out. That filthy maid worked 3 jobs so I could go to college. That filthy maid came to every school event in her work uniform because she couldn't afford to miss hours of pay. That filthy maid sacrificed everything so I could become a lawyer. So I could sit at tables with people like you and be treated as an equal. Michael tried to speak. Catherine, I didn't know. You didn't want to know. I screamed. You were happy to marry the successful black lawyer, the one who'd overcome her circumstances, the one you could parade around as proof of your progressive values. But you never wanted to actually respect where I came from. You never wanted to honor the woman who made me who I am. I turned to face everyone in the room. That filthy maid has more dignity in her little finger than this entire family combined. That filthy maid worked harder in one day than any of you have worked in your entire privileged lives. That filthy maid gave me this house, this life, this success. And you— I whirled back to Michael. You put your hands on her. You pushed her. You called her filthy. You told her to eat with the dog. My voice dropped to a deadly whisper. Get out. Michael blinked. What? Get out of my house, I screamed. All of you. Out. Catherine, this is my home too, Michael started. No, it's not. My mother bought this house. It's in my name. You're a resident here by my grace. And that grace just ran out. Get out. You can't throw me out of my own home. Watch me. You have exactly 5 minutes to leave before I call the police and have you removed for assaulting an elderly woman. And don't think I won't press charges. Everyone in this room saw you push her. I turned to Mr. Harrison, Michael's senior partner, who was still seated looking horrified by everything he'd witnessed. Mr. Harrison, you saw my husband physically assault my 68-year-old mother, correct? He nodded slowly. Yes. Yes. I did. And you heard him call her a filthy maid and tell her to eat in the kitchen with the dog? I did. Thank you. I'm sure the Maryland Bar Association will be interested in that testimony when I file my complaint about his conduct. Michael's face went white. A complaint to the Bar Association could end his career. Catherine, please, let's talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. You revealed who you really are tonight. You're your mother's son, entitled, cruel, and fundamentally unable to see the humanity in people you consider beneath you. I was a fool to think otherwise. Patricia finally found her voice. Now you listen here, young lady. No, you listen. I cut her off. You sat there and smirked while your son abused my mother. You've spent 5 years making it clear that I'm not good enough for your family. Well, guess what? Your family isn't good enough for you. That filthy maid is worth 100 of you. And I'm done pretending otherwise. Susan, James's wife, suddenly spoke up. Her voice was shrill, panicked. James, we need to leave. This is getting out of hand. Yes, it is, I said, turning to her. It got out of hand when you compared my mother to construction workers who needed to use a bathroom. It got out of hand when you all sat here treating her like she was subhuman. So yes, Susan, you should leave. All of you should leave. Now. Elizabeth stood up, her face red. Catherine, you're being completely unreasonable. Michael made a mistake, but you're overreacting. Overreacting? I was screaming now. He put his hands on my 68-year-old mother. He physically assaulted an elderly woman, and your mother smirked about it. That's not a mistake. That's abuse. I grabbed my phone from the sideboard and dialed 911. Don't, Michael shouted. Please, Catherine, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was drunk. I wasn't thinking. Oh, you were thinking. You were thinking exactly what you've always thought. You just finally said it out loud. The 911 operator answered. 911, what's your emergency? I need to report an assault. A man pushed my elderly mother during a dinner party. She's 68 years old and recovering from a stroke. I need officers to come and remove him from my home immediately. Catherine, no. Michael lunged toward me. Mr. Harrison stood up quickly, positioning himself between us. Michael, don't. You've done enough. Don't make this worse. I'll make it much worse if he touches me, I said coldly. That would be assault number 2, and I guarantee you I'll press charges for both. Michael stood there, his face a mask of panic and rage, realizing that his entire life was crumbling around him. Tom, Elizabeth's husband who'd been silent the entire evening, finally spoke. Elizabeth, get your things. We're leaving. But Tom. Now, Elizabeth. This is a disaster. We need to distance ourselves from this. Smart man. He could see which way the wind was blowing. Patricia was trembling with rage. Catherine, you are making the biggest mistake of your life. My son is a partner at a prestigious law firm. We have connections. We can destroy your career. Try it. I said coldly. Go ahead and try. You think you have connections? I've been building my career for 15 years. I have clients who trust me, colleagues who respect me, and a reputation for integrity. What do you have? A son who assaults elderly women and a family that thinks domestic workers are subhuman. Good luck spinning that in your social circles. The police arrived within 10 minutes. I explained the situation calmly, professionally. I am a lawyer. After all, I told them my husband had assaulted my mother, that multiple witnesses had seen it, that I wanted him removed from the house immediately, and that I would be filing for a restraining order the next day. The officers looked at Mama, who was still crying quietly, at the overturned chair, at the spilled wine, at the room full of witnesses. One officer turned to the guests. Did anyone here witness an assault? Mr. Harrison stood up. I did. Michael Patterson pushed his mother-in-law's chair backward with force. She's elderly and recovering from a stroke. It was completely unprovoked. Margaret Harrison nodded. I saw it too, it was shocking. Even Tom spoke up. I witnessed it as well. It was assault. The officer turned to Michael. Sir, you need to come with us. This is insane. Catherine, please. Michael, if you don't leave voluntarily right now, I will press full assault charges. The choice is yours. He looked around wildly at his mother, at his siblings, at Mr. Harrison, at the police officers. No one came to his defense. They'd all seen what he'd done. They all knew he was in the wrong. Fine, he said bitterly. Fine. I'll leave. But this isn't over, Catherine. You'll regret this. The only thing I regret is not doing this sooner. The officers escorted him out. I could hear him arguing with them all the way to the door. I turned to the remaining guests. The rest of you need to leave. Now. Patricia drew herself up, trying to maintain some dignity. Catherine, you're making a terrible mistake. When you come to your senses. I am in my senses. For the first time in 5 years. I'm thinking clearly. And what I see clearly is that your family is toxic, racist and cruel. I want nothing to do with any of you ever again. You'll change your mind when you realize what you're giving up. What am I giving up? A husband who abuses elderly women? A mother-in-law who smirks at human suffering? A family that judges people's worth by their bank accounts and skin color? I'm not giving up anything valuable. I'm throwing out garbage. Patricia's face turned purple with rage. She opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off. Get out of my house. Now, before I have the police come back and remove you too. She left, her head high, trying to maintain her dignity, but I saw the shame in her eyes. She knew what her son had done, and she knew the entire Baltimore social scene would know by morning. James and Susan left next. Not saying a word, Elizabeth and Tom followed. Mr. Harrison approached me before leaving. Catherine, I want you to know that what I witnessed tonight was completely unacceptable. The firm will be addressing this. Michael's partnership will be reviewed. Thank you, Mr. Harrison. And Catherine, your mother raised an extraordinary daughter. What you did tonight took tremendous courage. After they all left, after I locked the door and turned off the porch light, I went back to the dining room. Mama was still sitting there crying. I knelt beside her chair and took her hands in mine. Mama, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I brought you into this. I'm sorry I ever let these people near you. I'm sorry I didn't see who Michael really was until it was too late. She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. Baby, no. You stood up for me in all my 68 years. Nobody ever stood up for me like that. I should have stood up sooner. You stood up when it mattered. She touched my face gently. You made me so proud tonight, Catherine. So proud. I slapped him, Mama. I hit my husband. Good. He deserved worse, putting his hands on me like that, calling me filthy. Her voice hardened. He's lucky you only slapped him. If I'd been younger, I'd have done worse myself. I helped her to her room, made sure she was comfortable, gave her some water and her medication. Get some rest, Mama. Tomorrow we'll figure everything out. What are you going to do, baby? I'm going to divorce him. I'm going to make sure he pays for what he did. And I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of man he is. She nodded. Good. That's my daughter. That night, I lay awake in my bed. The bed I'd shared with Michael for 5 years. And I didn't cry. I didn't feel sad. I felt liberated. The next morning, I was up at 6. I called my lawyer, a fierce woman named Sharon Rodriguez who specialized in family law, and explained the situation. I want to file for divorce today. I also want a restraining order. And Sharon? I want to take him for everything I'm legally entitled to. Consider it done. Come to my office at 9. By noon, divorce papers were filed. By 2 p.m., a temporary restraining order was in place. By 5 p.m., the story had started spreading through Baltimore's legal community. Michael called me 17 times that day. I didn't answer once. He left voicemails. The first ones were angry. Catherine, you can't do this to me. You're destroying my career. Call me back right now. Then they became pleading. Please, Catherine. Let's talk about this. I made a terrible mistake. I was drunk. Please, just give me a chance to explain. Finally, they became desperate. They're reviewing my partnership, Catherine. They're going to fire me. Please, please. Call off the lawyers. I'll do anything. Please. I deleted every message without listening to them completely. Patricia called too. Her message was venomous. You little bitch. You've destroyed my son's life. We will make you pay for this. You think you can just assault someone and walk away? We have lawyers too. We will bury you. I forwarded her message to Sharon. Add harassment to the file. Within a week, Michael's partnership was revoked. The firm couldn't afford the scandal. A partner who'd assaulted his elderly mother-in-law at a dinner party in front of witnesses, including another partner. It was indefensible. Michael was out. No partnership, no prestigious firm. His career was in ruins. Patricia tried to launch a social campaign against me. She called her friends, told them I'd attacked her son unprovoked, painted me as the villain. It backfired spectacularly. The story had spread too far, too fast. Too many people knew the truth. Mr. Harrison had told colleagues. Margaret Harrison had told her friends. The story of what Michael had done, calling an elderly black woman a filthy maid, pushing her, telling her to eat with the dog. It spread like wildfire. People were horrified. Patricia found herself quietly uninvited from charity boards, dropped from social clubs, excluded from events she'd attended for decades. The whispers followed her everywhere. Did you hear what her son did? Can you imagine? Assaulting his own mother-in-law? And Patricia smirked, actually smirked while it happened. They say the mother was a domestic worker. Patricia's looked down on her this whole time. Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. The Patterson name, once prestigious, became associated with racism, cruelty, and abuse. Michael tried to find work at other firms, but in Baltimore's tight-knit legal community everyone knew what he'd done. No one would hire him. He called me one last time 3 months after that dinner. Catherine, please. I'm begging you. I can't find work. My career is destroyed. My mother won't speak to me. She blames me for destroying the family reputation. I've lost everything. You lost everything the moment you put your hands on my mother. I was drunk. I made a mistake. Haven't I suffered enough? Suffered? You've experienced consequences. There's a difference. My mother suffered for 45 years. Cleaning toilets for people who look down on her. That's suffering. You losing your job after assaulting an elderly woman? That's justice. So that's it? You're just going to let me lose everything? You let yourself lose everything. The moment you revealed who you really are. The moment you chose cruelty over kindness. The moment you put your privilege above basic human decency. You made your choice. Now live with it. I hung up. The divorce was finalized 6 months after that dinner. I got the house easy, since it was in my name and purchased primarily with my mother's money. Michael got nothing. His lawyer tried to argue for spousal support. Sharon laughed in court. Your client assaulted an elderly woman recovering from a stroke. Multiple witnesses testified to this fact. He called her a filthy maid and told her to eat with the dog, and now he wants spousal support from her daughter. Your Honor, this is absurd. The judge agreed. Mr. Patterson, you're fortunate Mrs. Patterson didn't press criminal charges. You'll receive nothing from this divorce except your personal belongings. Next case. A year after that terrible dinner, I was thriving. My career was stronger than ever. Turns out standing up against spousal abuse and defending your elderly mother makes you very popular in legal circles. My story had become something of a legend in Baltimore. Clients sought me out specifically because they'd heard about what I'd done. Women, especially women who'd been told to stay quiet, to keep the peace, to accept disrespect for the sake of family harmony. You showed us that we don't have to accept it. One client told me, you showed us that we can fight back. I'd also started a foundation, the Doris Jenkins Scholarship Fund. It provided full scholarships to the children of domestic workers. The children of maids, of cleaners, of housekeepers would get the same opportunities my mother had given me. The first year we gave out 10 scholarships. By the third year we were giving out 50. Mama was healthy and happy. She'd recovered fully from her stroke, and the stress of living in a hostile environment was gone. She looked younger, lighter, free. She volunteered at a senior center, teaching cooking classes. She had friends, activities, purpose. I spent 45 years serving other people, she told me. Now I'm finally serving myself, living for me. And it feels wonderful. One evening we were sitting on our back porch, the house she'd bought for me, the house that was truly ours now. Mama, can I ask you something? Anything, baby. That night, when Michael pushed you, when Patricia smirked, did you ever think I'd react the way I did? She smiled. Baby, I've been waiting your whole life for you to do something like that. What do you mean? I raised you to be strong, to stand up for yourself, to never accept disrespect, but I also taught you to be careful, to pick your battles, to survive in a world that didn't always value people like us. I taught you how to navigate white spaces, how to code switch, how to make yourself palatable to people who might not want to accept you. She took my hand. But that night, you didn't code switch, you didn't make yourself palatable, you didn't carefully navigate, you just exploded. You stood up and said no more. And baby, it was beautiful. I laughed through tears. I slapped him so hard, Mama. I know. I heard it. Sounded like a gunshot. She laughed too. Best sound I ever heard. I was so angry. I didn't even think. My hand just moved. Good. Sometimes thinking gets in the way. Sometimes you just need to react. And you reacted perfectly. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sunset. Then Mama said, you know what I realized that night? What? All those years I spent cleaning houses, keeping my head down, accepting disrespect from people who thought they were better than me. It wasn't for nothing. I was building something. I was building you. Mama. Let me finish. I raised a daughter who doesn't bow down. I raised a daughter who knows her worth and demands respect. I raised a daughter who will slap a man across his face if he disrespects her mother. She laughed. That's not the lesson you're supposed to teach your kids, but it's the one you needed that night. I'm not proud that I resorted to violence. Baby, I'm proud enough for both of us. That man put his hands on me. He physically assaulted me, and you defended me the only way that would truly register. You matched his violence with your own. You showed him that there are consequences for his actions. You showed his whole family that we are not to be messed with. She squeezed my hand. You avenged every maid, every domestic worker, every black woman who's ever been called help or the maid or treated as less than human. When you slapped him, you slapped for all of us. I just wanted to protect you. And you did. But you did more than that. You showed the world that the daughters of maids are not to be underestimated, that we fight back, that we stand up, that we demand respect. I thought about Michael, about where he was now. Last I'd heard, he was working at a small firm in Virginia, making a fraction of what he'd made before. His family had disowned him not because of what he'd done to Mama, but because he'd ruined their social standing. Patricia had moved to Florida, unable to face Baltimore society anymore. James and Susan were divorcing. Apparently Susan had had enough of the Patterson family toxicity. Elizabeth and Tom were still married, but they distanced themselves from the family drama. The Patterson empire had crumbled, and it all started with one moment of cruelty, one act of violence against an elderly woman who'd spent her life serving others. "Do you ever regret how that night went?" I asked Mama. "Regret? Baby, that was the best night of my life." I looked at her in surprise. "Really? Even though you were humiliated, pushed, made to cry?" "The humiliation lasted minutes. Your defense of me will last forever. Every time I think about you standing up walking toward him with that look in your eyes." And then she clapped her hands together. "That slap. Baby, I replay that moment in my head when I'm feeling down. It makes me smile every single time." She laughed, and I laughed with her. "You know what the best part was?" she continued. "His face. The absolute shock on his face when he realized you weren't going to be intimidated, weren't going to back down, weren't going to accept his abuse quietly. He expected you to cry, to apologize, to beg for his forgiveness. Instead, you slapped him into next week." "I can't believe I did that." "I can. You're my daughter, you're strong, and you finally showed that strength in a way that mattered." We sat there as the sun set completely. Mother and daughter in the house she'd bought with decades of hard work, in the peace we'd claimed for ourselves. Sometimes people still ask me about that night. About slapping my husband, about ending my marriage so dramatically, about throwing out my wealthy in-laws. "Do you regret it?" they ask. And I always answer the same way. Not for a single second. Because that slap wasn't just about defending my mother, though that was reason enough. That slap was for every black woman who's ever had to smile through disrespect. For every domestic worker who's ever been made to feel less than human. For every daughter who's watched her mother be degraded and was powerless to stop it. That slap was 45 years of my mother's suffering, channeled into one moment of righteous fury. That slap was justice. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat. My name is Catherine Marie Jenkins. I am the daughter of a maid, and when someone called my mother filthy and pushed her away from the table, I slapped him so hard his whole family felt it. They'll never forget it. Neither will I. And I've never been prouder of anything in my entire life. The end.